Welcome to the Waiting Warriors podcast. As loved ones of first responders and military personnel, we often face life situations and challenges that many others don't experience. And while each of us and our experiences are unique, together we can learn from one another and become stronger in this journey of life. Now let's step out of mediocrity. It's time to thrive. Hi, Waiting Warriors. I have a really awesome, special thing to my heart to share with you today. We have Mr. Just kidding. He doesn't want me to call him Mr. It's Austin Bowler.
Yes, it is me.
I don't know why I always say Mr. Bowler.
Because we live in the South now. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Everyone's very Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah,
here.
I was going to say, I never
More
did
proper
that.
than some of those Western states folk we lived, around for so many years.
Oh, yes.
Not that they're bad.
No,
Love our
yeah.
Western friends. But,
Just different. It's been very different living in the South. Anywho, I really wanted to do a podcast, and Austin's super sweet to come on and share with us. But I wanted to talk about what we did well, and then kind of what we didn't do so well during this last deployment. Because we've been around the block a few times before with separation. This wasn't our first separation, huh?
no, but it was our first deployment.
First
so
one.
things
It
were
is
different.
yeah.
Yes, very different in that regard. And I mean, we've talked about it, and I would assume a lot of the waiting warriors out there know that no deployment is the same.
Yeah.
And so, we're talking 2019, not 2003 or 2008, 2012.
Yeah,
wars, change and evolve and are different, and everyone's location changes and all of that. But so our experience is what it was, but I think the insights that we gained from it are beneficial and have an application to probably everybody in their circumstances and situations to some degree.
Yeah. Because I feel like the things that we are going to talk about, like we kind of made a list as we reviewed our experience.
Well, the truth is we were having a deep conversation while sipping on some beverages after Chick-fil-A breakfast this morning.
That's true.
Because
that's when deep conversations
sipping on beverages sounds weird. It was a Coke and a lemonade. But, Chick-fil-A breakfast for free. It was awesome. But they were running a promo.
Yeah.
Not that this is brought to you by Chick-fil-A, but
I
wouldn't discourage anyone from going and eating at Chick-fil-A. It's fantastic.
If Chick-fil-A wants to sponsor the podcast, I'll take that sponsorship. That'll be fine with me.
Yes, I'm sorry. I digress.
Anyways, but
we were having a conversation about things. Yes.
Yes,
sorry,
having a conversation about things. And after reviewing the list, I realized these are just really good principles that can help any separation at all. Even if it's a week long or, a few days or a few weeks or a few months. Or
hopefully never a year.
But... Yeah, hopefully the Army doesn't do that anymore. Anyways, first, I want to start off with one good one. What we did well.
Okay.
And one that I was thinking that I feel like I majorly improved this time because I may or may not have struggled a lot in the past was expressing my feelings. But then also both of us, when the other person expressed their feelings, we didn't, you're better with the fancier terminology, but we didn't make them to mean anything else other than we're humans and this is what we're feeling. Do you know what I mean? I didn't take your feelings of having a hard time over there as meaning anything about me. You didn't ever... At least you never expressed to me, if I was having a really hard time and just needed to unload on you, you didn't take it personally as you were ruining my life because you're the soldier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And because I was gone. So you're talking about how our emotions affected us while we were separated.
Right.
Or
yeah.
What was going on around us affected us emotionally. And when we were talking, sometimes it was unloading some baggage. And other times it was just the stress and strain of a day. And we're not exactly on our A game, so to speak, when we needed, or when we had time to talk, but we didn't take it personally and,
right,
get offended that oh, you don't have the energy or time for me. This is the only time I get to talk, and you went and did everything with your friends, and so.
Is that how soldiers talk?
Soldiers talk like
you talk sometimes. impersonate.
Just kidding. No.
No.
No, but like that's, really we had our days, but it wasn't anything personal, and we knew that.
Yeah.
And so I think keeping that emotional check throughout the deployment was important, because it would have been easy to say you were super short and get offended, or I was lazy and not wanting to talk very much because it was, I'd done a long training event or whatever we were doing. And,
But and I think in the past, at least I know I would like come into a phone call or a FaceTime, or did we FaceTime? I don't even know. Some video, whatever video call it was that we even did. But like I would maybe come into it with angst, but I tried to hide it because it's my one chance to talk to you and I don't want to ruin it, blah, blah, blah. But instead I feel like more often than not, we started off with a quick like, hey, just so you know, today, I don't know what would have happened.
The girls were screaming. It was awful. There's poop everywhere. June won't sleep very well. Just, all the normal things that go on.
Yeah. Or, some of those days. Or like, so-and-so's been throwing up. I didn't sleep. I love you. Or yours was, I haven't slept for 48 hours. Just so you know. But I love you. We were just able to, we were just able to approach each other, I feel like, in a lot better way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that, I guess, speaking of the communication thing, I don't know if you were wanting to go in any particular order here of whatever you wrote down, but
no, go for it.
Just the concept of communication while deployed was something that we learned about and learned from.
Yeah.
Again, comparing to our other separations where technology is available. During this particular deployment, we had access to phones and internet and Wi-Fi, so we could FaceTime or message over different mediums and stuff like that from time to time. And we set the expectation ourselves going into it about how frequently we would anticipate phone calls or video chats and messages, so that way we didn't set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
Expecting an everyday FaceTime. Some people do that, and I guess the point of this is that everyone can figure out what's right for them, for their soldier, their waiting warrior, their spouse, their family, their friends. But the bottom line is there isn't a right way to do it. But what we chose to do was probably message every day, so long as we could, knowing that there were days when we probably couldn't. But then a phone call or FaceTime 2 or 3 times a week would probably be sufficient. That way I could focus on the work that I needed to do, focus on my soldiers and the needs that they had, and you could focus on being mom and doing the waiting warrior projects and everything that you had going on, without really getting, I guess, too enveloped in the idea that just because we are each other's, we're husband and wife, and we love each other, that means we have to talk and FaceTime and do it every day. And if we miss, then that means she doesn't love me, or or the kids aren't wanting to talk to me, and so that's the end of the world, and all of that. Yeah,
and it hurts, and it's personal, and all that kind of stuff.
But it wasn't, and I mean, I feel like it worked well for me on my end.
Yeah, no, and for me it did too. I feel like in past separations, I at least did, like, I felt like we needed to talk every day because we're each other's person, and I don't know, like,
if we didn't FaceTime,
then we didn't love each other or whatever. But then there were a number of times where it was really awkward because we had nothing to talk about, because it had been a day and you had been training, doing Army stuff. I had been at home doing mom stuff, like nothing significant to report. Significant. But then we'd stare at each other like, well, I love you, I miss you. Why don't, and like a number of times I got upset because we didn't have anything to talk about. And it's like, well, this sucks, you know what I mean? But I think it helped a lot for that, but also for, not that like we don't have time for you when you're gone, but I feel like it is emotionally super consuming, or just more consuming, to talk every day. Because then our whole life revolves around that phone call, and that's a lot of like stress and pressure and planning that doesn't necessarily have to be there. At least, again, like you said though, for us, like we have figured out that that's how we function best.
Yeah, but that's just learning how to use the technology available for what works best in any given circumstance or relationship.
Right.
There isn't one right answer to that.
Right.
And just because it's available doesn't mean that it's the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a good lesson learned and improve from past separations to this one.
Yeah. Another thing, like, I feel like we did well this time was keeping OPSEC. And not that I think we ever didn't keep OPSEC, but this was the first time you were overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So we really needed to keep OPSEC.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk more about that? Because you know all the better lingo.
No. Well, I mean, it was just something we had, again, mentioned when we were doing our drive from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. He just wants to go back.
No. Well, yeah. But the point is, like, the operation security OPSEC, it's important, and you hear stories about soldiers and, or maybe they're Marines or sailors, whoever's over there, that aren't doing great, that say things they shouldn't, post things on social media that they shouldn't, And I felt like we did a pretty good job in just being aware that if, I was traveling, for example.
Yeah, you traveled a lot.
You took it like a champ. I would let you know in an appropriate way, like, hey, I anticipate moving sometime in the next, week or 72 hours, or I don't remember what I said exactly, but within the appropriate bounds. That way, if we didn't talk, if you didn't hear from me, you didn't start to
freak out.
Freak out and spiral into the worst. Like, that's, it's not
super common,
unreasonable. I was going to say, for people, if you're used to, again, with the technology communication tools that we have, if you're used to that consistent, touch point, and then all of a sudden you just don't get it for 48 hours, the last thing that I want, and that I think any soldier, or I'm going to say soldier. When I say that, I mean, that's the world I live in, but it could be
service member.
Yeah, service member of any branch. Last thing we would want is family and friends to be worrying. But that doesn't mean you get to spill all the details of what's going on and why you're out training until the wee hours of the night, wherever you're at, or why you're on whatever mission or movement from, point A to point B. And so I felt like we did well in setting, again, kind of a known standard there, where I would communicate with you in a specific way that would then keep the operation security, OPSEC, in good bounds, and then you, as the waiting warrior and a very supportive spouse, would have that peace of mind that you needed.
Yeah, but I also I had to, and I've continued to have to just learn to deal with the ambiguity. Like, it sucks. Yes, they love us. No, they don't want to keep secrets from us. It's just kind of, we could do a whole episode about dealing with the ambiguity. Like, it's not even secrets. It's not like you want to keep stuff. It's just to keep people safe.
No,
I know some spouses have a really hard time with that, and I'm not going to say that's right or wrong. For me, we've just learned to deal with it, and I've accepted that I would rather you guys be safe than me know. So, but yeah, and even with, like, posting on social media, because I talked a lot about the deployment on Instagram, and there, like, I know there was one time where I was just so sick and tired of you traveling. Every time you traveled, it made me nervous, because that, like, in the movies, that's always when people get blown up, is when they're traveling in cars. Like, that's just not the safe time. But I talked about it, and I even had a few people message me back on Instagram, like, hey, be careful. It's like, oh no, this happened like 2 weeks ago. I'm just now talking about it because...
No, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, and I know that's also something that spouses and other waiting warriors have a hard time with, is like, okay, but that means I can't talk to anybody. And yes, but I at least still found solidarity and comfort and found that community of talking about it just a week or two later.
Yeah. Well, on the social media end. That doesn't mean that... I mean, you and the other spouses of the unit,
we talked at coffees and stuff.
When you'd get together, for the ladies' nights and different things, that you didn't have conversations about those stresses and strains. But again, that being appropriate in the timeliness of doing posts, or the amount of information shared and when it's shared, I think is extremely important. And, the world's not going to go away from that. I mean,
Yeah.
the access to technology and the ability to just, in the moment, make people aware of what's going on isn't going to change. And so that doesn't mean that you're alone, though. You're right. Just because it's not posted on the social media feed doesn't mean it's not real and happening. And maybe the best thing to do is reach out to somebody
at home,
in person, at home, or on a phone call, local, and talk about what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. Last thing, the only other thing we did well on this.
No, we got to come up with something else, because if we switch to what we didn't do well and we end on what we didn't do well, it's going to be kind of,
Well, I was just breaking it up into categories. They get it.
Well,
okay, we'll
like, this is what we did well, and then we're going to depress you the rest of the episode.
No, you just think of the positive.
Okay.
Oh, gotta think of the positive. The last
what did
thing...
we do well, Michelle?
It's more just about me, but also part of you and how you handled it was that I stayed active in my own way, as quote unquote active as a new
quote unquote active.
Well, because
you were active, own it.
Well, yeah,
Don't
but
even...
like at the same time, I had a newborn baby and 4 kids.
Yeah.
So like,
let's list the things you did with a newborn baby and 4 kids and see how quote unquote active that was. I'd say it's just active. Continue. I'm
okay,
sorry.
so I while he was gone, I had family come in. My sister came to stay with me, and her 2 boys, and her husband at one point was there as well for a little bit, and then my mom also flied out, so that was fun. Fluted. She plays the flute.
Got on a plane.
She traveled across the country in a flying mechanism. Is that better?
Yes.
To stay with us. And then what else did I do? I drove in. Just kidding. I'm just pulling you away.
Whatever.
I drove from Fort Campbell to Denver area, Colorado, for a family reunion, which was super fun, totally exhausting. Basically just slept for like a week after, but it was totally worth it. Mm-hmm. What else did we do? Girls
just
and
the
I.
day ins and
yeah,
day outs.
Yeah, just the day ins and day
You
outs.
constantly had play dates with other kids. Yeah, church activities. Time at the splash pad with the girls here in the neighborhood, and going to the parks around the neighborhood. Yeah. Outside time.
I guess I just say
you bought a barbecue. You barbecued.
Oh, okay. I guess that's the other thing. I not only bought a barbecue, but on the 4th of July, I hosted a potluck. Because I grew up, I guess, this is more what I mean of active. It's like I didn't give up the things that I really love. Like a 4th of July barbecue. 4th of July is my favorite holiday. It's there's like Christmas. And for me, 4th of July is like right there. And Christmas is only above because it's all about Christ. Like that's the only reason it's above. But I love 4th of July, and I love 4th of July with you. And my family growing up has a lot of traditions. One of those being a barbecue and water and stuff. But I mean, this year I really easily could have been miserable because you weren't home, and I don't have any family by. So
and we didn't have a barbecue.
And we did not have a barbecue, but I
remember we were actually making money.
Yeah.
I was no longer in grad school or a resident.
Yeah.
At a hospital.
We've been doing a really good job with our budget.
Yeah, we've been living within our budget, and we actually had some money.
We had some money, so I solved that problem, and I went and bought a barbecue, and then I put an open invitation out to our church congregation and said, hey, I have a barbecue. I had like a little $20 Walmart kiddie pool and a trampoline, and said, bring a side dish, bring what meat you want to cook. And it was a blast. It was so much fun. But I guess I just say quote unquote active because like we didn't have something to do every day. We did have a number of days that were just at home.
Yeah, but I think that goes with every summer or any.
I guess.
And that's, not unique just to the separation. That's a time and season as well.
Yeah, I just don't want to paint the picture that like we were going to do this, and then we did that. It's like,
oh
we
yeah,
had
no, there were
you know what I mean?
there were the days in between, but I know what you're saying with the quote unquote active, but my point is, like, from my end, you would say that you had this going on. You had someone was over, or you had a play date, or, your mom was there, Alicia was there, and, you were over at the family reunion. And there were times when, like, you were at the family reunion, I intentionally didn't FaceTime. Like, we never, I don't think we set up a FaceTime. Yeah, we did it one time. And I think it was more so, for the girls.
Yeah.
That they could see us. But we had that understanding that, hey, you were doing you. You were being active, and,
I was going to speak with my
it
cousins.
is what it is, kind of thing. But, like, that, I mean, that time is your time. And you should be able to, focus on you and doing the things that you like, and have that understanding that doesn't mean there's less love, or, I'm not still the number one in your life.
Yeah. Just
because you have an activity going on, or a social, or it's the holiday, and you're spending it how you want in an active and fun way.
Yeah.
That's why I just don't want you to sell yourself short, because all the variables considered, even taking out some of the variables, that's still a very packed, summer and spring and fall, that you had there. And so,
yeah, I guess you could say, like, I never said I couldn't do something.
You didn't excuse yourself from things because
there were
I
things I
wasn't
decided
around.
not to do.
Yes, but that's different.
But I never said I couldn't do something.
Yeah.
Which, before you left, and, like, we were talking about, like, the family reunion, for example, there was a little bit of time where I was like, I can't. Like, how could I possibly? And I, like, had to figure out that either craziness or strength, whichever one you want to call it.
Some people call it the pain of regret and the pain of effort.
Yeah.
Like, you would have emotionally had a huge toll on you if you chose not to go.
Yeah.
As draining as it was, and like you said, you slept for a week after, but you had a lot of fun.
So much fun.
You spent time with your cousins and your aunts and uncles, and you
And
played games, and
my
all of
siblings,
your siblings were there, and your nieces and nephews, and so you were active and didn't let the deployment get in the way.
Yeah.
You didn't say, "Oh, my husband's gone, I can't."
Yeah.
And there are things, like you said, you chose not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that there isn't ever going to be a circumstance where maybe you can't.
Yeah.
Because I am gone, and logistically it maybe just doesn't work very well.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't you use it as an excuse, a crutch, to just lean on and then hide away.
Yeah. Instead of, like, pushing myself. Yeah. That's a good point. I like it. Okay. The things we did terribly and we suck at. No.
It's a bit harsh, but room for improvement.
Okay.
Let's call it that.
Rooms for improvement.
Rooms for improvement?
Whatever. He's always judging my grammar. It's because he got a master degree.
This is just the result of podcasting so late at night.
Ah, that's true.
Or
9 o'clock at night, 9:30. It's so late for us. We're getting old. Yes. Anyways, one thing we didn't do well that we actually, like, when we first started, I don't know if this would have been on the list, but because we have had a separation where we did it really well.
A couple
separations where we did it really well, and it really benefited us, both personally and, like, our relationship, so what we've done in the past is we had a block of scriptures that we were going to go through while you were gone, which we did this time. We had decided what we were going to read.
Yeah.
And it was a substantial amount, 534 pages.
31.
31?
Well, I guess if you include the introductory material, but I think we read that before I left.
Okay.
Anyway,
so that's up
details.
To the details. But what we had done in the past is we had a shared note on our phone. We have Apple phones, and you can, like, share a note. So he could write something on it, and then I would see it when I opened. Like, it would automatically update on our phones. And so we would, like, he would read whatever set of scripture and write just whatever his thoughts were about it. Or even some days, like, in the past, it was just, I read it, basically, no profound discovery. But we I don't know, we didn't do super great on that. I know there were some technical difficulties on, like, my end.
Yeah, but it was I guess didn't do super great at the writing and
on the writing
communicating
part,
about what we read.
Yeah,
we read. I mean, we accomplished the goal of reading every day, or at least playing some catch up if we missed a day. But getting the scripture that we wanted to read during the block of time that I was deployed. Mm-hmm. But that communication back and forth and sharing the experience of what we were learning was a little lacking.
Yeah.
Was not as fulfilling as it was in previous separations, when it was really neat to either wake up and see that Michelle had written something, or at least to me it was.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go to bed and I check the log and, there's one of her insights, and that motivates me or reminds me that, I didn't read yet.
Yeah.
I should,
I got to do that.
It might have been. But yes, that connecting log wasn't as...
But also, I think it's super important, whether you are religious or not, I think it's super important to have something spiritual and intellectual that you guys do together. I feel like that's really served us in our marriage. Yeah. Particularly the spirituality part. Because then we are growing and learning together. And I know I learn a lot from you. Just in your, because you have a different understanding and point of view on scripture than what I do. And so that's just something that at the end, when I was thinking about this podcast, I was like, oh man, we didn't have that. And again, we read that huge chunk together, and I think we grew together in a certain aspect.
And we discussed it at moments, but just not consistently.
I feel like we could have done more.
Yeah. And to echo part of what you were saying there, is just the idea of doing something that keeps you connected.
Yeah. It could
be reading a self-help book. Again, if you're not a spiritual individual or you're not religious, it doesn't have to be, scripture or a meditation guide or anything like that. But doing something that keeps the two of us connected, the soldier and the waiting warrior connected, is important.
Yeah.
And to me, obviously, as a chaplain, I think it's important that there is a spiritual component and connection that is maintained between a husband and wife, especially. But
but that can be whatever level they're at.
Yeah, whatever level or whatever interest that you have, but just maintaining that connection and continuing to grow as a couple while separate. That is one of the ways that you can do it, and that's one of the things that we didn't do super well. Yeah, we still grew, but we could have done more.
Yeah. And one example of an intellectual thing is actually in another podcast episode with Krista Stubbs, I believe is her last name. I think her episode is in the 20s. I think teens or 20s. Super, super fun example. Her and her husband are writing a book together. So while they're gone, he'll write some lines and she'll write some lines, but it's something that they're collaborating on, and it's been super interesting for them. So if you want to hear more about that, go check out her episode. That's just a little thing she talked about. Do you want to talk about the next thing that we didn't do well?
What is it?
It's the seizing the opportunity within the deployment for personal development. Yeah.
However, to paraphrase Dieter F. Uchtdorf, a great religious leader and a wise man, I think, it's good to slow down sometimes during turbulence. And you could say a first deployment is a turbulent time. And so I do give myself and you a bit of grace there, that we didn't seize all the opportunities for personal development. But on the other side of that same coin, there is a bit of ownership that, I recognize looking back. It's a lot, hindsight's 2020.
Right.
But there was some downtime I didn't really take advantage of. Or I could have probably been more proactive in some of my ministry, or even just in some of the social aspects, for bettering myself in, connecting with the people around me, or my own personal studies. I could have read more, written, different things in how I utilized my time. That, again, it's easy to, look back and say that wasn't fully seized, but good to do it. Yeah. It's we won't grow and become better if we're not willing to, look at things from another perspective and maybe critique ourselves a little bit
Yeah.
in that degree without too much grace or mercy. But I still think there is some there, given it was a first deployment and you had just had a baby.
Right.
Like, you were mothering 4 daughters by yourself while I was gone. Physically recovering. There's still that emotional toll that's going on as the hormones are changing and everything.
Oh my gosh, no.
But no, but you did a handful of personal development things too. But
and that's what I was gonna ask. Did you like ever set goals? I know we had the goal for the scriptures, but were there any? Because I know I had set some for me, and I feel like I did a little bit better with the personal development. Obviously, I could have done more. Yeah. But at the same time, I had just had a baby, and I think I did okay. But did you? I had like at least set goals and was working towards it. I didn't need it all.
Yeah, I met some of my goals, but I feel like they were maybe limited.
Yeah.
In that I had some of the spiritual goals that I had set for myself, or that we set together, and then I did some exercise goals. I hadn't really done much with weightlifting before, and yes, exactly. But I hadn't done much with weightlifting, but there were some soldiers and another chaplain from the brigade that I was able to spend some time with that showed me some technique and how to lift and do different things. And so I ended up setting some goals there and actually reached them and attained them. And that was a good personal development thing. But the ones that I know I didn't do well, that I, going into it, thought, I wanted to write more or journal some experiences or write you letters or, things like that, where we could have probably held on to, some of those notes or letters or, my life story, where I probably could have used some of that time where I'm not distracted by the kids or, the church callings and things that I do once I'm back here in the States and my, schedule gets filled more, I probably could have seized some of that time to really do some of those things that I know I wanted to going into it, knowing that there wouldn't be the same distractions, but then, the schedule's different, the heat out there is intense, so the energy level's up and down, but I can excuse it all day long. The bottom line is, I feel like I fell short and probably could have done better. Not probably, I could have done better.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't that so funny though? How funny the hindsight is. Like you hear somebody's on a deployment, and you think, oh, they're gonna be so crazy busy, and you guys are, but then you just said it would have been easier potentially to do over there because you didn't have all the things you have at home. Like, it's just interesting to me. The soldier life. It's crazy. So you kind of mentioned the next one was we didn't do a super good job of documenting or like writing letters.
Yeah,
creating
I just
keepsakes
touched on
for
that
the thing.
Briefly, but yeah.
Because other like we wrote each other
training,
letters.
We wrote letters, and we have those, and those are great keepsakes for our personal histories, and the kids can read them when they get older.
Yeah.
I know there was one of the soldiers out there wrote a letter every day.
That's
and
impressive.
it turns basically into a journal. I don't know if it was so much the, I need to write a letter and make sure my loved one knows everything that's going on from day to day. But that writing is now essentially a day-to-day journal of even the mundane things. Because not every day is exciting, but, there's highs and lows, and there's, tension at work or whatever might be happening because it's the same people day in and day out, and come month 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, like the
sharing
personalities and relationships start to change a little bit, and for better or worse. And so just all of those things, though, including the mission and where it was at, and whatever appropriately could be written home, is now a keepsake.
Yeah.
But we didn't really have that.
Yeah.
We have some things, but not.
I will not be able to remember if you loved me or not during that time period. Because basic training, when we're having a hard time and I don't know if you love me or not, I go back to those letters. It's like, oh, he loves me. I will never know. Once it's gone in the memory.
What do you say to that? I don't know what to say to that. I love you.
Now it's in the podcast, so it's true. No, but that is a good point, though. Like, every marriage has ups, has little downs, And it's I think it's super helpful to have reminders like that of like the love letters and stuff that you can go back and remember. It kind of helps you keep grounded. You know.
Yep.
But and not that we're gonna have a super hard time now because we didn't create those. But it's just something that you can do intentionally to help combat that. Last one that I know I did a super terrible job on, and I feel like it was more my responsibility as the mom, just on how we've like divvied up parenting responsibilities. Is I did a really bad job of keeping track of when the girls were talking to you. Like you said before, like we texted or sent some sort of message almost every day as we could.
Yes.
And then
Very
we would
blessed in that. Yeah. We had the opportunity to do that.
Super, super fortunate. And then we would talk every now and then, but not every time you were able to call, the girls were around.
That's true.
Because it was either, I mean, like 10, 11 at night.
Or they were at school.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, just life. You know, they were out doing something with somebody or whatever.
Yeah. But like, I know there were a few times where we were talking, or I was talking with a friend. I'm like, oh my goodness, the girls are just acting ridiculous and like Emma was acting up a ton. What is going on? Blah, 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 blah. And then I realized, Michelle, you just talked to Austin 2 days ago. Emma hasn't seen or talked to Austin it had been like a week and a half. It's like, oh.
Whoops.
My bad. No.
Yeah. And that's not totally your responsibility, like 100%.
But in the way that we've kind of divvied up parenting.
But it's also just, again, with, I mean, the pace of things over there. And, you know, I never wanted out of neglect to not talk to the girls or anything. But like you said, it just didn't happen for some reason, for whatever reason, from time to time. And, you know, that was just another point of improvement to make sure that we had those touch points. And another thing that we talked about and learned was it's, you know, not just about the quantity, but the quality, you know, that sometimes the girls probably didn't even really want to talk much, even when they had the opportunity to talk to me. But that they had the opportunity was good. Mm-hmm. And maybe just affording them more of those probably would have been a good thing to do. Not that I went like a month without talking to them.
No. It never, I don't think it ever got more
But I know I know of other soldiers that I don't think their kids wanted to talk to them. It's not because they didn't love them, but it was just like...
When you're 3 years old.
Or however old their kids were. I just remember at least one person saying like, hey, my kids don't ever really want to talk to me, but, you know, it's just a phase. Like, they're not interested in FaceTiming. Yeah. You know, that's digital talking. Like, they didn't really care for it very much. Yeah. But their love and relationship was still good. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. I guess I just felt bad because I know I was mentally tracking how often we were talking. So I just know I was taking care of myself and I didn't do that super well for the girls. And I felt bad about that.
Point of improvement for the next time.
But we can end on a positive note because I just remembered something we did do a good job at. Was you did a good job of sending some sort of like voice message, like a voice recording. I think you were able to send a Marco Polo one time of like when you knew the girls had something of either like a good luck or I'm thinking about you or I hope it went well. But like it was very targeted towards that moment. So it was like you were there. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you tried to be involved even though it was a big moment that you were.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to being intentional. Yeah. You know, to me it's at least my approach, my perspective is it's better to have those touch points that are meaningful, that hopefully they remember, than a daily conversation or an opportunity to look at my face and talk on like whatever video streaming app. And so that, I mean, and those are the important points because I don't know. I feel like some children are going to get the short end of the stick because of when the separations are.
Mary.
Yeah, well,
Poor Mary.
Mary, I've missed 2 of her birthdays. I'll probably miss her birthday again this year. Mm-hmm. But, I've made it a point to, when I am around, like making it to her Student of the Month presentation, or sending that voice message when she has something going on, because those are the important moments. And just because I can't be there for some of the other ones doesn't mean I don't want to be, or that I don't care, or that there isn't love.
Yeah.
And so again, communicating that in a quality way at the right times, in my opinion, is better than just having an unlimited amount of abilities to have a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, thank you, Chaplain Fuller.
You're welcome.
You're awesome. I know. I like doing the little after action review on the
Don't
deployment.
even say that.
It's helpful though.
The
AAR about the deployment. It helps me, like, for the next separation. We're gonna have a number this year, but we'll take it on like a champ.
Yep.
Like we always do. So there, we ended on a good note.
Cool.
Except for we're not gonna end. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are.
What helps me thrive as a waiting warrior?
Ooh!
Oh no, I'm not a waiting warrior. Hold
on.
I'm a part of the system.
Send my life away.
Just kidding. But
No.
seriously.
I want to end with, though, you are a chaplain, which is cool.
Yep.
And in case everybody doesn't know, chaplains aren't just like, hey, here's scripture type thing. Like, they're not just there to preach. They're there to help and to counsel. But from your point of view as a chaplain, because you were home taking care of the families, and then you went out there taking care of the soldiers, service members, what are some insights that you can give us waiting warriors as a chaplain, particularly like for deployments? Yeah.
So I guess if other people haven't had much interaction with their chaplain, we have confidentiality with our soldiers and with the family members. And we provide religious support, but in that counseling aspect, like that confidential space, I can talk about some of these things that are maybe trends or things that I saw and or heard, whether it was personally or through other chaplains or even kind of through the grapevine, overhearing what the other soldiers and service members were talking about. And so some insights would be really setting expectations before going, whether it's the communication expectation or the budget or what's appropriate or not appropriate in the relationship, who can you let in or out of the house, things like that. Like
to protect the marriage.
Yeah, to protect the marriage, protecting your relationship, knowing the boundaries of that relationship, whether or not you can, not that you can, like you're giving each other permission.
Because you trust each other.
But saying, what you will or won't do, I should say. Not that you can or can't.
Yeah.
But what you're going to choose to do or choose not to do, make those choices ahead of time and stick to them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I don't know all of how people got into their compromising situations, but I know one of the number one issues that I feel like was there is that stereotypical unfaithful spouse. Yeah. Whether it was the person overseas or the waiting warrior at home. And it's a hard subject. I don't like talking about it, but I'd be lying if it wasn't true.
Yeah.
If I didn't say it wasn't true, I should say. I know that is there. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's, one of the big ones, setting up your game plan for success to keep your relationship intact. Yeah. And then if it doesn't seem like it's going well, don't just, throw it out the window and think that you're the exception to the rule and that you can be alone with, John or Jane, and that nothing's going to happen. Yeah. Don't put yourself in those situations is just one thing. Have those open conversations with each other as a spouse, with what is or isn't difficult, whether it's substance or emotional, ups and downs, the highs and lows, anxiety, depression, the relationship things, the temptations there. Have an openness in relation, in conversation, in your relationship as a warrior and waiting warrior. That would, I think, go a long way. Yeah. So that's one of the big things. all of that, setting up the game plan and I touched on some of the big ones, that open communication, finances, protecting your relationships, and setting up your own left and right limits of what is or isn't appropriate for you, and then having that open dialogue about what the struggles are would probably be a decent summary of some lessons learned, I guess, from the perspective that I have.
Yeah. Awesome. I like that. Well, last question
Ooh,
we end every interview with.
Why are you saying it like that?
I don't know, because it's funny.
But I'm not the waiting warrior. Can you ask me this question without being a waiting warrior?
Yes, because I will word it differently. Austin, during the deployment, what was your key to thriving?
Okay. Key to I'll say keys to thriving, maybe? I don't know. I haven't put a lot of thought into this. I should have anticipated it for the podcast. I probably did, and I just didn't write it down.
You didn't write it down.
But what helped me thrive during the deployment, because I don't think it was just survival mode. I mean, it was my first deployment, but I think what helped me was creating friendships, being open to that. It wasn't just, some people think, for better or worse, like being a chaplain can be kind of lonely. Yeah. Because, we do have that, like I just talked about, the relationship that I have with soldiers and the confidentiality, and people tell me things, and like some people might think that gets kind of awkward, but I try not to let that get in the way and still just be people's friend. Yeah. Maintain the appropriate relationships like I talked about, and also within the rank structure, not break rules there, but like just, still being social enough. To where it's, I'm not by my family, because a lot of my family is my life. Like, I love being with my daughters and being with you, and that's where a lot of my time goes when I'm not. Yeah. Or when I am home, when I'm not at work and stuff. Yeah. But being over there, just, I think, choosing to surround myself with the people that I could when I could, in the doses that I wanted, And another thing would have been a good regimen with exercise. Yeah. Keeping that up. Set different goals, like we talked about a little bit, the weightlifting, but then just PT in general, I think helped me thrive in a good way, as well as probably one of the number one things was the scripture reading. That was very grounding for me, just having that regular regiment, and again, something that I feel like I probably could have improved on in some ways was even as the chaplain, some of my spiritual aspects. There were ups and downs with that, but there are in any season of life. Yeah. But still, that was a foundation of every day was reading for me. And so I think those would be probably my 3 keys to thriving. Oh. Spiritual and physical fitness, and having good relationships and friendships, while I was training and doing everything we're doing.
Cool beans. I like it. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Austin.
Thanks, Michelle.
It's good having you. Awesome. This was fun. Well, I'm super grateful that you came on, because I think you're awesome, and I'm glad I got to share you just a little bit. I think you're awesome. With my fellow waiting warriors. Oh, thanks.
And I think you think you're about to wrap up this podcast.
But yeah, because it's my show.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm just kidding. It is your show. So, but what I'm going to do is ask you.
What are you doing?
Michelle. What was your key to thriving during this deployment?
Oh. Okay, now you're putting me on the spot. I was putting you on the spot.
You always ask the question.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
I think this one goes both ways. I was the interviewee, but you were also the waiting warrior in this circumstance.
I was.
So what was your key to thriving during the deployment?
I think for me, what really, really helped, because I can honestly say, I think our family really did thrive through this deployment. It was really hard. It was really hard. Like both for the girls, for me, for you, collected, like there it's not like there wasn't ever a point where any of us or all of us like we're having a really hard time, But I think we can say we thrived through it because we were able to like work through that.
It was also a very good time.
Yeah, there were a lot of really good times. But I think I thrived. My key to thriving this time was keeping the perspective and the mindset that I could thrive. In the past, there have been one separation in particular comes into mind where I didn't think that was possible. I thought that I just had to be in this moment and circumstance, and it sucked, and it just had to. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to, like, there was literally a day, just like trying to think of like the worst day of the deployment. One child kicked another child off a trampoline, got super banged up.
Yes.
Blood all over the place.
That bloody picture.
Mm-hmm. Blood all over the place. I had to take one child and baby June to the emergency room until super late. I'm exhausted. It's mostly women listening, so if you're nursing, you know the feeling of like the nursing schedule got mixed up. So there's that feeling, like just so much craziness. And then the next day trying to care for the kids, and like Mary couldn't go to school and all this kind of stuff. Like it was so crummy. So many other things. And then just the heartache of missing you. But like, even in that, I knew that like tomorrow could be a different day. As opposed to just thinking, I can only survive through this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I knew that, and I knew that there were things that I could do to make it thriving. Like I had my non-negotiables and stuff that really helped me lift myself up. But
yeah,
just that mindset of that I could thrive really helped in those super difficult times. I didn't feel stuck. So that's what it is.
Very good. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us for this podcast.
You're cute.
This is the Waiting Warrior's spouse. Signing off.
Take it away, Annie. Well, thanks again, Austin, for being on the show. For all you Waiting Warriors, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Hopefully you were able to learn something from our experience, just like you do from all the other podcasts.
And by no means are we experts at this.
Yeah,
I guess it's our first deployment, but I hope the insights are worth it for others to learn something from.
Yeah.
Because again, I feel like everyone's experience, you can learn something from it.
Yeah.
Doesn't,
That is like the whole point of this podcast.
Yeah, very true.
If you haven't caught on yet, listeners, that's why I do this. Because I want to learn from everybody. Well, all you Waiting Warriors out there, you guys have a good week. We're going to go to bed because it's past our bedtime. We need to sleep. That's how we're going to thrive. But I'm cheering you guys on. Have a good week. Bye. Mwah. I want to take just a minute and tell you guys about a really amazing online event coming up for all first responder and military loved ones, aka you guys. This year is the 5th annual Independent Wellness Summit on March 2nd through the 7th. It's a week-long online summit put together by a group of military spouses, and this year they have incredible speakers talking about dimensions of strength. Last year was my first summit, and I loved it. Not only was it super helpful for me to spend time focusing on my personal wellness, but I also learned a ton that really helped me in some of those hard weeks of our deployment last year. I really think it's important for us Waiting Warriors to take time to fill our cups and learn so we can then truly thrive in this life. And this Wellness Summit is the perfect way to do just that. So, go to www.in-dependent.org/wellness summit or just their website and you'll find it real fast and get the general admission for free. Again, general admission for free. or you can grab an all-access pass with the code WARRIOR20 for a great discount. I have my all-access pass purchased and ready to go, so I'd love for you to tag me on social media when you get your ticket. I can't wait to see you all there so we can learn and thrive together.